everyone. My name is Ariane, and today's soup of the day is social injustice. Please welcome my guest,
Officer Chang.
Officer Chang. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I have a few questions for you today.
Sure.
So, being an officer, what do you think about children under the age of 21 being sentenced with life in prison?
Well, as an officer, I'm doing my job determining who is a threat to society, and those people are the ones who are processed through the system. They can be from the age of 13 to late 70s, to be honest with you, but I definitely disagree with those who are significantly younger and end up in being sentenced to life in prison.
Do you ever feel guilty for arresting the youth?
Well, maybe when they're around 15 years old and start crying, but it's truly my job to make sure laws are being followed. But life in prison, being sentenced before the age of 21, that's just unethical.
What exactly do you mean by unethical?
It's unethical because before the age of 25...
Whoa.
Oh, good.
Wow.
Earthquake!
We gotta get out!
Oh.
Sorry everyone, we just experienced an earthquake.
Earthquake.
Yep, that was it.
All right. Well, as I was saying, because before the age of 25, physical development of the brain is not yet complete. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for reasoning and judgment, only becomes fully functioning after the age of 25. I just don't think it's ethical or fair for these kids behind bars where they develop maladaptive behaviors that serve to shape their personality as an adult.
So what are maladaptive behaviors that are learned in prison?
Well, it's really violent there, so kids who don't actually have a naturally aggressive nature learn to adapt to their environment as a necessity for survival. They don't have a choice but to leave their sense of identity at the door.
Wow, that's very disturbing.
Yeah, and those who do leave as a different person. Our federal prison is where adolescents are sent when they commit first degree murder, and it's not a nice place to be.
What do you mean?
Well, even the Supreme Court is quoted saying that people under 18 is immature and susceptible to peer pressure. I actually believe people under 21 are still immature. I remember when I was 21. Whoa! You need a napkin? Well, anyways, young prisoners don't benefit from the system at all. I mean, how do you focus on improving yourself when your cellmate is threatening you every day? In prison, the goal is nothing but to survive. Actually, my idol Maslow, his hierarchy asserts that in order to fulfill self-actualization, you must first feel safe and have a sense of relatedness with your surroundings. That's not an easy thing to accomplish, being behind steel bars.
You're absolutely right about that. Is there an age limit for the accused?
Actually, in Alabama, children as young as 14 can actually be charged and convicted as adults in any alleged offense.
Well, that doesn't seem right.
Actually, the neighboring state of Florida sends more children into adult criminal court and into adult prisons than any other state.
How many states actually allow this?
The states that have no minimum age for life sentences, which are 14 of them.
How many minorities are actually sentenced to life in prison?
Well, according to the Equal Justice Initiative, there are at least 73 U.S. inmates who were sentenced to spend the rest of their lives in prison for crimes committed when they were 13 or 14.
Do you think it's fair that they're not given a second chance at this age?
It is not fair at all. Many adults are given a second chance. Charles Manson, a notorious murderer responsible for killing 7 people that he committed when he was 27, was eligible for his 12th parole hearing and has been denied parole 11 times. Another one is a guy named David Berkowitz who confessed to killing 6 people in the 1970s when he was in his 20s, has had 4 parole hearings, even though he said that he doesn't deserve parole and doesn't want it at all.
Well, if those guys were given a second chance at an adult age, then these teens should be given a second chance.
Absolutely.
So what do you think is a better alternative for the kids who have actually committed these heinous crimes?
Well, first of all, research has shown that children in the adult criminal justice system are 34% more likely to be arrested again than those convicted of a similar offense in juvenile court. They also are 36 more times more likely to commit suicide than youth in juvenile facilities. On the other hand, though, juvenile courts prized a future-focused method.
So the point of this method is to lower the levels of reoffending, right?
Absolutely. It does, in fact, reduce crime. I mean, if you think about it, caging a teen for a few years before releasing him back into society without psychological help is ridiculous.
Are there any states that practice the future focus method?
Absolutely. States such as Missouri enjoy a 92% success rate of keeping offenders from re entering the system.
How else can this method help us as a country?
Rehabilitation is 8 times more financially effective, dollar for dollar, than incarceration. Any funds spent to lock up some young offenders for a few years could instead, if applied to rehabilitation and treatment, prevent exponentially more teens from over-harming the society again.
Over-harming, yes.
Mhm. Population is also a big problem. Let me just show you something. Oh, not that one. Here we go. So as you can see here, I want to show the audience.
Oh, okay.
Okay. As you can see, there are actually more prisoners than there are engineers, nursing assistants, secondary school teachers, construction laborers, childcare workers, physicians, surgeons, social workers, and lawyers.
Wow, that's very sad.
Yeah, the only way to stop this is to put the death penalty in action. Am I right?
No. I think you need to watch this video.
I think I already know everything I need to know, but okay.
In the year 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court declared the death penalty as unconstitutional. This is true because death by lethal injection alone contradicts the Eighth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishment. The death penalty, however, was revived only 4 years later. It is said that out of 9 people on death row, there is always at least one who is wrongly accused, and Troy Davis, executed in 2011, was one of these 157 Americans. Based on circumstantial evidence, his wife lost a husband and his kids lost a father. Troy was killed in the southern state of Georgia by lethal injection. This process includes the administration of 3 drugs: sodium thiopental, pancronium bromide, and potassium chloride. But before I get into this, we first need to imagine ourselves in Troy's perspective. He was forced into a room with only a flat metal bed mounted in the center. This bed had arms that extended as if he was about to get crucified, but instead of rusty nails, his crucifix had leather straps that gripped his wrist, seized his ankles, and clenched his chest. But of course he was not alone. In the room with him were men wearing disposable gowns and protective masks, which is apparently a part of death penalty regulation, as if approved documents and established procedures vindicated his death. The first drug injected into Troy was sodium thiopental. Its purpose is to mentally incapacitate him by disabling the signal receptors in his brain, making it unable to receive nerve impulses. This is supposed to put him to sleep and render him completely unconscious, only sometimes it doesn't work. This means that when the second drug was administered, pancuronium bromide, there's a possibility that Troy was actually experiencing the entire process with unimpaired lucidity, only he could not show it. Pancuronium bromide is what hunters use to dip the ends of their arrows to completely paralyze their target. When injected into a human being, it does the same thing. It first affected Troy's chest, immobilizing his diaphragm until he could no longer breathe. As the drug's effects radiate throughout the rest of his body, he's losing a lot of oxygen, but unfortunately not enough to kill him. Potassium chloride is then injected into his veins. This is an agonizing chemical that triggers cardiac arrest. It only takes a few seconds for his heart to stop beating, but within those few seconds, while the legally permitted poison travels throughout his blood vessels, is an excruciating pain that Troy is not even physically capable to express. Troy Davis was a Black American wrongly accused of killing a white cop. He was executed in Georgia, and 75% of all executions taking place in this country is in the southern states. It's 20 times more likely for a defendant who is Black to receive the death penalty if their victim is white. Racism in America is alive and has manifested into the silent, systematic killing permitted by the federal government. As a community, we need to immerse ourselves in the crises that are not our own. We need to be proactive as individuals in gaining social awareness because ignorance and apathy is what sustains the digression our society is still enduring today. Well said, well said. Okay, thank you for joining me, Joseph.
Officer Chang.
Officer Chang, all right, well, that concludes my soup of the day. Good night.